Hello, welcome
Hello.
everyone. We are part of Connective Therapy Collective, and we are doing a queer relationship podcast. Starting off now, our pilot. So I'm going to start off introducing myself. We're both going to just introduce ourselves and kind of spend some time talking about why we're doing this podcast. Why is it even important? And we hope that people listen and want to share and tell us more about what they want to hear about, because we definitely have plenty to talk about. Part of this is seeing what's going on in the world, specifically in queer relationships. I really have been thinking about this for years. Melissa and I work in relationships, all types of relationships. We should clarify that. Like, we're not talking, yes, we're saying queer relationships, but we're also meaning like folks in all sorts of monogamy, non-monogamy, polyamory, kink, BDSM, asexual, all the different things. We're not talking about just what we call standard, I guess, monogamy. So we have been, both of us work with couples and different relationship formations. And it's like the combination of like being a therapist and only hearing, like, really, we hear negative about relationships all the time.
Yeah.
Like, do you feel that way? Can I say that, Melissa? Like,
Yes. Yeah. And I think when we were talking about this podcast, you had mentioned that, in therapy, we pathologize, we're responsible for diagnosing and treatment plans. And it can be very overwhelming, the amount of what's not working, that we are encountering hour after hour every day.
so we were like, hey, or I was like, I want to hear about what's going well, like what's working. And that's one of the things I do ask in therapy. When someone says, yeah, this week has been a good week, I'm like, oh yeah, what went well? And then people are kind of like, oh, like, how do I talk about that? And so the idea is that you and I get to talk, but we also get to bring people in and talk about like, what is going well? What is working in your relationship?
I think it's so important for people to have models too, especially when we're talking about queer relationships. Not just models that aren't working, like you said, what is going well. And I would argue that even, queer dynamics, things like that, we might get into later on in the podcast. I think those are relevant for everyone, whether or not you consider yourself being in a quote unquote queer relationship.
Yeah, I mean, straight people can definitely learn a lot from queer people. And, we all have our different views. Some people say that everyone's a little queer. So
I'm bisexual. I feel like I definitely make that judgment. I'll admit.
So I'm Keely Helmick. I am a queer, gender nonconforming, white person, non-binary femme, just kind of doing a gender exploration. So there's lots of things you could say about gender. I won't spend this whole time about gender because it's not the podcast for that. But I am a co-owner of Connective Therapy Collective, therapist, supervisor, and really like a big theater nerd and love radio, love podcasts, and was like, why am I not doing a podcast right now? So then, Melissa, do you want to share a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, sure. So I am Melissa. I use she, her pronouns. I am a bisexual, polyamorous, white, cisgender female. I'm also a theater nerd and just general artist and a licensed psychotherapist with Connective Therapy Collective.
When I say I'm a theater nerd, I also love to listen to other queer podcasts and hear what other people are saying. And I like the idea of just really this idea of decentralizing the cis-het normative framework and really normalizing this like full spectrum of what a relationship can be. And so that's another piece of it, is like, can we model, like you said, have models, but also have voices of people who have different experiences and are reshaping and changing, like not going, what's the term we always say, relationship escalator, like getting off the relationship escalator and creating their own relationships.
Yeah. And that freedom to be playful and creative. I mean, that's a word that I think has been coming up more and more in therapy sessions that I've been holding, especially in this pandemic, container that we're in, when spontaneity and creativity, have really taken a back seat to just survival day to day. And having that creativity, having that room for fluidity and movement and change, in relationships is, to me, part of what makes relationships keep growing and building, and not get stagnant and stuck.
Yeah. So what do you think, I think we should also introduce maybe our relationship dynamics. You feel comfortable talking about like your, I think.
Context is helpful for sure. And I think already, if not already, then soon my sarcastic, humorous tone about my own self will surely come through. So yeah, happy to share. And that's part of my why in terms of what brought me to Connective Therapy Collective. As a clinician, I really wanted to align the clinical work that I'm doing with what I'm also grappling with personally, and how I'm learning to grow myself. So a little bit of context, I'm recently divorced from a partner of 10 years, really significant relationship in my life. Also publicly out of the closet about a year ago. Those two things are somewhat unrelated, but happened at the exact same time. And I guess in addition to that, I've been practicing ethical non-monogamy for about 4 years. I identify as a polyamorous person. And I think with that, part of my agenda and hearing what's working is I'd like to convince myself that I want to be back in relationships with people. So please help me with that along the way, everybody. But one of the themes that I have been grappling with personally is the balance between autonomy and being in connection with other people. And how do I be in connection with other people without losing myself? So that's one of the big themes that's kind of underscoring my life right now, and something I'm interested in exploring more in this context.
Yeah. So yeah, even still, like one of the things we talked about in counseling all the time is being vulnerable as a therapist. So I also got trained about 15 years ago, and the way that we were trained 15 years ago is different than currently.
Yeah.
So we were very conscientious about self-disclosure. So I still get a little nervous about my self-disclosure. But yeah, so my relationship status. So I have been out so I did the thing. I started off like, I've been super queer since I was a kid. I did like the hidden relationship or whatever in high school and really got shamed hardcore. But I came out to my family when I was 19, but I came out as bisexual.
Mhm.
And then I was in a very cis-hetero appearing relationship and traditional, because we were very cis-het appearing. However, both of us are queer. And that's when I started exploring ethical non-monogamy, was in a marriage. And actually our first week of dating was like, we met up and I'd like made out with like some random woman, and I'm telling him all about it. And he's like, oh, that's great. So we really started off as like non-monogamous from the get-go. But none of our family knew.
Mhm.
We
Mhm.
didn't tell. I mean, people had these like ideas or thoughts of us, but no one knew. Had 2 kids, and then was like, like this whole like dude thing, cis dude thing just is not working for me. And I was like, I really am not wanting to be in this anymore. And
Mhm.
hadn't been for a long time, hadn't wanted to be, but was like so unhappy, but didn't understand all the things. Now I look back and it's a form of compulsory heterosexuality. I was like, even being out at the age of 19, I was in this compulsory heterosexuality appearing
Mhm.
dynamic. Well, so then I was like, oh no, I'm super gay, and got out of the marriage, and then just went on a journey, still on a journey, sexuality and gender wise, and have been in and out of monogamy, non-monogamy, currently in a monogamous relationship. And frankly, in a monogamous relationship, can't even imagine having a 13-year-old and a 9-year-old and trying to be with more than one person. So
I hear that. I can only imagine.
So yeah, that's where I'm at status wise. I might be a little more quote unquote boring right now. I don't know, just monogamous, and not dating. So I'm like in a partnership. And I do identify as kinky as well. I'm somewhere in that realm of kinky, not vanilla. I don't know, whatever you want to say about that. So
thank you also for like naming where you're at currently. I don't know if I can promise to be any more interesting, but I am actively dating, I think. I'm doing that thing where you go back and forth between creating your profile and deleting it. So that's where I'm at right now. I do have 2 current partners, but yeah, I appreciate kind of the let's keep bringing ourselves in, like you said, in a vulnerable way, but also I imagine that the themes that we'll share, throughout this podcast will align with some of what we're going through personally as well. So happy to keep everyone posted.
I think the dating thing, I think it's great that we have different perspectives, and I am always curious to hear about what's going on with dating, because I'll also be super vulnerable. I'll be like single for a minute and then go on the dating app, and I've had such different experiences on dating apps and other people, or like meeting people. And so maybe I just am not picky enough. I don't know. I just like go on it, and then I meet people, and then I'm like hanging and don't need the app anymore. So like that's my experience, but I'm not trying to say that I'm like, oh, I'm like so attractive or whatever. Like I said, I might just not be picky enough. But
I think I'm very picky. And so what will happen for me is I've spent an hour on this app swiping left, and like I just like, why am I here?
You're like, what's the point? What are we doing? What's the point of this?
But I also am the kind of person who, for me, relationships really build in person. So it's so difficult, that format, specifically. And it's sort of what feels accessible right now in these times. So.
Yeah, for sure. Well, and so we always get people. So I think included, or, we've talked about included in this, like, oh, there's the cat.
Yeah.
Really, it would not be a queer podcast without animals around. Like, I think that's I think
you gotta have like the cat lady over here. And actually, I will tell you that the cats did come out of relationship woes. I went through my divorce in the fall of 2020, moved to Portland on my own, was dating someone locally, and then that relationship ended because he and his primary closed off their relationship. So 2 relationship traumas back to back. And I remember getting, again, back on the apps, and I asked my friend, like, is it too soon? Like, right, as if there's a too soon. But I asked that question. My friend said, Melissa, get some cats. So I adopted 2 lovely kittens, and I also scheduled a date. So, it wasn't too soon for me, but I did try and take some advice as well.
Well, I think there's a lot of stereotypes, and we'll be really careful. I'll try and be conscientious, and it's really easy. And so, like, please, listeners, like, write in if you hear something that we're like saying that's like, ooh, like out of date, or it sounds kind of pushing the envelope, do no harm. But there are some like really intense stereotypes of dating. And like, I think I don't know, I find it hard to talk about giving ourselves time to heal and time to ourselves, but also it can come across as really polyamory shaming.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Because we have these things of, oh, you're a serial monogamous, and like as if there's something wrong with that. As if there's something, if you want to be in relationship with people in whatever ways you want to be in relationship, that's okay. I don't think it's about, we put this judgment of like, you should wait to go on a dating app till so and so time, but that's really about monogamy mindset.
It is, and I found it, at least for myself, to be in conflict with my ideas of trauma, because, for me, healing trauma happens through experience. It's not just talking about it from an emotionally detached place. Mm-hmm. So while I would say that there's plenty of healing I am doing solo on my own, and that's sort of just my nature. I'm an introvert. I really like alone time. Moving like in with myself has been such a gift. And in terms of my healing process, some of those wounds happen through relationships. And so for me, part of the recipe of putting myself back together is to heal through relationships. There's only so much I can do by myself with my therapist, talking about it. I got to get out there and experience it in order to, shift some of these assumptions and narratives I'm holding.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think it's just about what works for each person. And so that's, I mean, obviously that's why we're both therapists. Like one of the great things about therapy is figuring out what works for us as individuals. And so it works better for some people to be single for a while. And yeah, I hear so much people being like, well, I'm purposely not dating. And they'll be like, for 30 days. I'm like, great. And they're like, well, or Keely, do you think you should be doing this? Or I should be doing, they ask me and I'm like, it's your life, you get to choose. But I do like hearing, I mean, is it fun to hear these stories of like people that are doing their own thing? Sure. But like not putting a prescription on like what each person has their own experiences. And I don't think that there's a timeline that's right for everybody.
Right. There's not a supposed to be, and I think that's also going back to what you said about like the relationship escalator and getting rid of that idea. Like that's our intention with queer relationships. Like there isn't one model. There's no, this is right. This is what it should be. It's let's just explore what we each individually need and what we want.
Yeah, totally. I'm just thinking of like this sex educator that I was just listening to. Her name's Eva. And she was like, she has a class and it's called Fuck the Patriarchy, Fuck Yourself.
Love that.
And I'm just like, and I think you and I talk about this a lot, and this will probably be, I'm sure, a continued theme of like how sex and queer relationships and queer joy is part of the revolution, is part of dissent, is part of like the like going against and creating change.
Yeah. Resistance through orgasms.
Resistance through is that our theme?
That might be
our theme. Is that our theme, our mantra? Resistance through orgasms. I mean, I will say one of the things I've said forever. I remember when I started saying this. I'm like, if every person ate more, got more sleep, and had more orgasms, how much better. And the eating more after the pandemic, I don't know. I don't necessarily need to eat more. I love food a lot. But like the getting more sleep and like more orgasms, like imagine how much more chill everyone should be.
Right. Basic coping skills.
The resistance through orgasms. Yep. Big fuck you to the patriarchy. So is there anything else we want like people to know? I mean, this is our first, like we're going to be doing this for a little bit. We're going to be doing some episodes where you and I are just chatting. We'll have like a theme for the episode when it's you and I. So like maybe kind of hopefully educational for people, interesting. And then we want to do some interviews too, splashed in with that. What else should people know?
Well, I mean, like you said, I think this is our kind of kickoff and our starting point. I guess from a therapist seat, I don't put myself in the expert position, and I certainly am not going to do that here, So as you said earlier, Keely, please, I would love to invite people to connect with us and challenge us, give us new things to think about and talk about. That's why I'm a therapist. It's to keep expanding myself and helping others do the same. So, there's plenty of problematic thinking in my own brain that I am continuing to rewire. And I'm really excited to have this be a collaboration between us and the community in that way.
Yeah, I love it. So I know one of the things we did talk about, we want to end each episode talking about our queer joy. Speaking of resistance. So yes, resistance through orgasms and what queer joy, what have you experienced this past week? What queer joy have you experienced, Melisa?
So my big one, I've told you this before, and I'm going to claim it as my queer joy. I am binging all of RuPaul's Drag Race, all seasons. And when I binge, I don't stop till I'm done. So people are recommending shows and I'm like, yeah, you're going to have to wait. But, I've really been integrating this into my own life as well as, the quote that RuPaul ends with every episode. If you can't love yourself, how in the hell are you going to love somebody else?
Yay. I love it. Well, here's where some people might have something to say about this, but that's okay. My queer joy of the past week is, so sometimes I identify as a lesbian. That's okay. And I did the total lesbian thing this past weekend and totally geeked out and got new camping gear and have my nice new backpack and went camping with my partner. And it was great. It was so amazing. And I was very proud of myself because she actually got injured, which sucks. So her foot was hurt. And normally I'm such an extroverted person, like blah, blah, blah. I don't want to do things with myself, blah, blah, blah. Like I want her to go with me, but she stayed back at camp. And I went and explored for 2 hours by myself on a hike. So that was my queer joy. Yeah. So that was like a combo of like two different like growth queer joy and just like total queer joy of like being outside camping.
That's so beautiful. And, I won't judge my own queer joy, but like, I'm glad you were outdoors stuck behind a streaming device.
Wait, did we just pop in? Did I just do a really good segue to our next episode? The autonomy, how we do autonomy with like connection. I think we did.
You did.
Yeah.
You're doing it.
We're doing it already. I'm doing it. Yay. All right. Well, I think that's about it for this this first episode. Thank you all for joining us. You can find us at Connective Therapy Collective on Instagram, on Twitter. Our website is www.connectivetherapycollective.com if you're interested in learning more about our services and about our collective. And am I missing anything, Melisa?
No, but I think, again, since we're here at the beginning, please do connect with us. Let us know what you want to hear about. Let us know what themes you'd like to talk about, what's going on in your relationships. And certainly if you've got more queer joy to share, we'd love to hear it.
All right. Thanks, everyone. Have a great week.
Give me what you got. Anything. I don't need a lot. Just everything.